If you were a truly good person, upright, blameless, and deeply God-fearing, would you expect a life of peace and protection? The story of Job will shatter everything you thought you knew about divine justice. In a single day, the wealthiest and most devout man of the East lost his fortune, his 10 children, and his health, leaving him scraping his sores in the ashes. Why would a loving God allow Satan to touch such a faithful servant? Was this a cosmic bet between the Creator and the accuser? Or was there a hidden secret behind the agony, a purpose for pain that the human mind has yet to grasp? How do you keep your soul when the heavens go silent? Welcome to a deep exploration of one of the most ancient and mysterious books in the Bible. Today, we are stepping into the council of heaven to uncover secrets far beyond what you've imagined about suffering, the silence of God, and the real reason Job was put to the ultimate test. We are going to peel back the layers of a story that has haunted theologians for millennia. Prepare your heart, because these untold secrets might completely change the way you view the storms in your own life. To understand the magnitude of Job's testing, we must first look at the height from which he fell. Job was not just a good man. He was a titan of righteousness and prosperity in the ancient world. The Bible begins with the words, "In the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job." Job 1:1. While the exact location of Luz is debated, likely between Edom and Arabia, the setting is intentionally patriarchal. Most scholars believe Job lived around the time of Abraham, before the law of Moses, before the priesthood, and before the nation of Israel. By placing Job in Uz, a Gentile land, the Bible presents a Bible secret. Job represents all of humanity. His struggle is not just for one nation. It is the universal cry of every soul facing the silence of the Creator. The text uses 4 specific Hebrew descriptors to define Job. He was 1. Not sinless, but a man of complete integrity. 2. Literally straight. He didn't bend the truth for gain. 3. He lived with a constant awareness of the divine presence. 4. He didn't just avoid sin, he actively pushed it away. Job was the gold standard of human morality. He was the most successful man in the East, yet his heart was not chained to his gold. One of the most touching untold secrets is found in Job 1-5. After his children finished a cycle of feasting, Job would rise early and sacrifice burnt offerings for each of them, thinking, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Job's righteousness wasn't just outward, it was deeply inward. He cared about the secret thoughts of his children. He was a mediator, a bridge between his family and God. He was a man who lived in a state of constant spiritual vigilance. Job possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. In the ancient world, this was Bill Gates-level wealth. In that era, everyone believed that wealth equals God's blessing and poverty equals God's curse. Job was the ultimate proof of this theory. He was the poster child for the idea that if you are good, life will be good. This is exactly why the test had to happen. God was about to dismantle the contractual religion, the idea that we love God only because He pays us in blessings. Job had it all: the family, the fortune, and a spotless reputation. He lived behind a hedge of protection that seemed impenetrable, but high above the clouds of Uz, a conversation was taking place that would tear that hedge down. In chapter 2, we go behind the scenes into the heavenly court to witness the most dangerous challenge ever issued, the accuser's bet. While Job was busy offering sacrifices for his children, a cosmic event was unfolding that he could not see. This chapter reveals one of the most misunderstood Bible secrets: the nature of the spiritual battle behind our physical reality. The text tells us, "One day the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them." Job 1-6. These sons of God, B'nai Ha-Elohim, are angelic beings, a celestial council that reports to the Creator. In the Hebrew text, the word is Ha-Satan, which means the accuser or the prosecutor. At this point in the biblical narrative, he is not depicted as a red creature with a pitchfork, but as a high-ranking spiritual officer whose job is to patrol the earth and find flaws in humanity. It is God who initiates the conversation about Job. He holds Job up as the gold standard of human devotion. God isn't just proud of Job's behavior, He is proud of Job's heart. God knew Job was ready for a level of testing that would prove something to the entire spiritual universe. This wasn't a bet made out of boredom. It was a demonstration of a soul that truly loves God for who he is, not just for what he gives. Satan issues a chilling challenge. Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? Job 1-9-10. Satan is the ultimate cynic. He argues that Job's righteousness is just a business transaction. You pay him with sheep and children, and he pays you with worship. Satan's challenge strikes at the heart of every believer. If God took away the paycheck, would you still do the work? Is your faith a relationship or a contract? God grants Satan permission to strike Job's possessions, but with a strict boundary. But on the man himself, do not lay a finger. Job 1:12. This reveals a vital Bible secret. Satan is on a leash. He cannot touch a hair on your head without divine permission. God allowed the hedge to be removed not to destroy Job, but to prove that Job's love was deeper than his lifestyle. God was betting on the strength of a human heart fueled by grace. With the hedge removed and the accuser authorized, the stage was set for a catastrophe that would shake the foundations of Uz. Within minutes, the most powerful man in the East would become a man of sorrows. In chapter 3, we witness the black day when 4 messengers of doom brought Job to his knees, and the world watched to see if his faith would survive the wreckage. In one single black day, the hedge of protection was lifted. The transition from the highest peak of prosperity to the lowest valley of despair happened not in years, but in minutes. This chapter analyzes the rapid fire testing of a soul. The Bible describes a sequence of 4 messengers who arrive one after another, barely allowing Job to breathe between reports. Job 1:13-1-9. Stole the oxen and donkeys and killed the servants. Economic loss. Lightning fell from the sky and burned up the sheep. Religious confusion. It looked like God was the enemy. Swept down and took the camels. Complete bankruptcy. A desert storm struck the house where his 10 children were feasting, killing them all. Total emotional devastation. Notice the Bible secret in the timing. Satan didn't strike once a year. He struck all at once. This is the strategy of sensory overload. When tragedy hits in waves, the human mind struggles to process grief, leading to a state of shock where one is most likely to curse God out of raw, unshielded pain. For an ancient patriarch, losing your children was worse than losing your life. It meant your name, your future, and your legacy were erased from the earth. When Job did not curse God after the loss of his property, Satan was granted a second test. Stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones. Job 2-5. Job was struck with loathsome sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. He was forced to sit in the ashes outside the city. In the ancient world, this disease made him unclean. He went from the most respected judge in the city gate to a pariah that people turned their faces from. The world and the accuser waited for the curse. Instead, Job stood up, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground in worship. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Job 1:21. This is the ultimate Bible secret of chapter 3. Job understood stewardship versus ownership. He realized that his children and his wealth were never truly his. They were on loan from the Creator. By worshiping in the ashes, Job proved that his faith was not a contract for blessings, but a covenant of love. Job had passed the first test of loss and the second test of pain. But the hardest test was yet to come, the test of why, and the sting of silent friends. As Job sat in the dust, 3 men approached from the horizon, bringing with them a theology that would cut deeper than any sword. In chapter 4, we explore the religiosity of blame and the mystery of why good people suffer in a world that demands a reason. After 7 days of silence, the atmosphere in the ash heap shifted from shared grief to a theological battlefield. Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, came to comfort him, but they ended up becoming his miserable comforters. This chapter reveals the secret of the retribution principle. The core argument of the 3 friends was simple. You reap what you sow, argued from experience. Who, being innocent, has ever perished? Job 4-7. He believed Job must have a secret sin that God was punishing, argued from history. He believed God is perfectly just, so if Job was suffering, Job must be wrong. The harshest of the three. He suggested that Job was actually being punished less than he deserved. The Bible's secret here is the danger of a transaction-based faith. They believed God was like a vending machine. If you put in good works, you get out blessings. If you get curses, you must have put in sin. This theology makes man the master of God. It implies that we can control God's actions by our behavior. By defending God's justice, the friends were actually attacking God's sovereignty. As the accusations grew, Job's physical pain was eclipsed by his spiritual agony. He knew he was innocent of the specific crimes they accused him of, yet he couldn't understand why God was silent. In the midst of his despair, Job utters a profound prophecy in Job 9:33. If only there was someone to mediate between us, someone to bring us together. Job was crying out for a daysman, a bridge builder. He realized that a mortal man cannot argue with a holy God without an advocate. This is a direct foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, the one mediator between God and man. Despite the pressure to confess just to make the pain stop, Job refused to lie about his integrity. Till I die, I will not deny my integrity, Job 27:5. God was proving to Satan that Job didn't just love the blessings, he loved the truth. Job would rather be a suffering man of truth than a comfortable man of lies. The human arguments had reached a dead end. The friends were exhausted, and Job was broken, crying out for an audience with the Almighty. But be careful what you wish for. In chapter 5, the silence of the desert is shattered by a whirlwind, as the Creator finally speaks not to answer Job's questions, but to ask questions of his own. For 37 chapters, Job and his friends debated in the dust. They demanded an explanation. They demanded a trial. Finally, the silence of the heavens is shattered, but not in the way anyone expected. God does not come with a hug or an apology. He comes in a whirlwind. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Job 38:1. A whirlwind, Sa'ah, represents the overwhelming, untamable power of God. It is a Bible secret that God often speaks most clearly not in the calm, but in the center of our storms. God begins with a challenge. Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Job 38:2-3. Instead of explaining why Job suffered, God takes Job on a breathtaking tour of creation. He asks Job over 70 questions that Job cannot answer. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? God speaks of the mountain goats, the wild donkeys, and the hawk. God is showing Job that the universe is vast, complex, and beautiful, and Job doesn't even understand how a blade of grass grows. The secret here is perspective. If Job cannot understand the physical world he sees, how can he expect to understand the moral and spiritual government of a transcendent God? In the final part of his speech, God describes two terrifying creatures, Behemoth, the beast of the land, and Leviathan, the monster of the sea. In ancient Near Eastern culture, these creatures represented chaos and evil. God is telling Job, there are forces of chaos and evil in this world, like Leviathan, that are too big for you to handle. But I have them on a leash. I am the only one who can tame the monster. God was admitting that evil exists, but he was affirming that he is still in control of it. Job's response is the turning point of the entire book. He doesn't say, now I understand why my children died. He says, my ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. Job 42:5-6. Job realized that knowing God himself was better than knowing the reason for his pain. The Bible secret of chapter 5 is that the presence of God is the only answer big enough for the suffering of man. Job found peace before his circumstances changed. He worshipped God while he was still sitting in the ashes, simply because he had encountered the majesty of the Creator. But God was not finished. The test was over, the accuser was silenced, and a season of unprecedented restoration was about to begin. In our final chapter, we witness the double portion and the eternal legacy of the man who refused to curse God. The book of Job ends not with a philosophical explanation, but with a divine vindication. The Bible secret of the ending is that God was not just restoring Job's wealth. He was certifying Job's righteousness before the entire spiritual and physical world. Before God restores Job, he turns to the three friends. In Job 42:7, God says, "I am angry with you, for you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has." The friends thought they were defending God, but God called their theology a lie. Why? Because they tried to put God in a box of human logic. God commands Job to pray for his friends. This is the ultimate Bible secret. Job's restoration began only after he forgave and prayed for those who had deeply wounded him during his time of grief. 2. The double blessing. Symmetry of grace. The Bible records that the Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the first. He received exactly double the livestock he had lost: 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He had 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. Notice that the number of children was not doubled. Why not 20 children? Because Job's first 10 children were not lost forever. They were in the presence of God by giving him 10 more on earth. God gave him a double portion, 10 in heaven and 10 on earth. A beautiful, overlooked detail in Job 42-15 is that Job's daughters, Jemimah, Keziah, and Keren-Happuch were the most beautiful in the land, and Job gave them an inheritance along with their brothers. In the ancient world, daughters rarely received an inheritance. This shows that Job had been transformed. He no longer lived by rigid social laws, but by a heart of expansive, radical grace. The ultimate Bible secret is that Job's life is a type or shadow of Jesus Christ. Like Job, Jesus was innocent yet suffered the loss of all things. Like Job prayed for his friends, Jesus prayed for those who crucified him. Job's restoration is a preview of the resurrection, proving that for the righteous, death and loss are never the final word.